After the death of Chinese actor Yu Menglong, authorities quickly ruled out foul play and closed the case as an accidental fall. Many Chinese netizens, however, were unconvinced, and for good reasons. Fragmented but leaked video footage circulated online, and while incomplete, it was sufficient to seriously challenge the official conclusion and render a criminal cause of death plausible in the public eye. As the police response appeared focused less on transparent investigation than on suppressing discussion, netizens began organizing their own inquiries. Earlier rumors resurfaced, including allegations of money laundering, claims that Yu knew too much, and speculation that he had swallowed a USB drive containing evidence. Among the materials examined, one detail drew particular attention: business records showing that Yu Menglong's name had been registered as a trademark under Class 13, a category covering firearms and fireworks. To many observers, this was inherently suspicious. Artists have no obvious commercial relationship with such industries, which are highly sensitive and tightly controlled by the state. Netizens speculated that this category could facilitate audit evasion or provide cover for opaque financial transactions, making it suitable for money laundering schemes. Subsequent searches revealed that Yu Menglong was not an isolated case. Top-tier celebrities, including Yang Changxi, Zhao Liying, and Xiao Zhan, who are managed outside EE Media, as well as other actors under EE Media, such as Guo Junchen, were also found to have their names registered under Class 13. This pattern heightened suspicion that what initially seemed exceptional might actually reflect a systemic practice within China's entertainment industry. On Chinese social media, these discussions were swiftly labeled as rumors and suppressed. The authorities offered no public explanation. Once the content was cleared, no clarification followed. Yet the discussion did not disappear. As with other information deemed intolerable inside China, it migrated beyond the Great Firewall and gained traction in overseas Chinese-language spaces. There, the absence of official explanation did not resolve doubt. It amplified it, fueling broader speculation about elite corruption and state-level cover-ups. Against this backdrop, on October 10, 2025, several weeks after the rumors began circulating, an article appeared on Goody25, a Malaysia-based Chinese-language lifestyle and social news platform. Written in a neutral tone, the article reproduced screenshots summarizing netizens' findings, including lists of artists whose names were registered under Class 13 and the associated money laundering suspicions. At first glance, the article appeared merely to relay viral content. It then introduced additional screenshots, one showing an ordinary netizen asking what such registrations meant, and another featuring a purportedly well-informed user responding with confident authority. This response asserted that the registrations were standard trademark protection measures intended to prevent bad faith commercial use of artists' names. It further claimed that these celebrities had registered their names across all 45 trademark classes for precisely this purpose. The conclusion was preemptive. There was nothing suspicious, and the fact that so many prominent figures had done the same was presented as proof that this was normal industry practice. But is it actually normal? To answer that question, it is necessary to step outside China. In most jurisdictions elsewhere, celebrities register their names as trademarks only in industries with a clear and plausible connection to their professional activities, such as entertainment services, advertising, apparel, cosmetics, publications, or merchandising. The guiding principle is commercial plausibility, or at minimum, a credible intent to use the mark within a foreseeable business context. Defensive trademark registration does exist internationally, but it is limited. Legal systems in the United States, the United Kingdom, the European Union, Japan, and South Korea impose varying degrees of scrutiny on intent to use claims. Overly speculative registrations, especially in heavily regulated sectors unrelated to the registrant's profession or associated with public safety, are more likely to be challenged, rejected, or invalidated for non-use. As a result, it would be highly unusual for a film or television actor in these jurisdictions to register their personal name in categories such as firearms or explosives. Not because it is inherently illegal, but because it raises immediate questions of commercial plausibility and exposes the registrant to legal, reputational, and evidentiary risk. The incentive structure is fundamentally different. In systems with clearer boundaries and predictable enforcement, the risk of bad faith trademark squatting is lower. Celebrities rely on prior use doctrines, unfair competition law, and judicial remedies rather than preemptively registering every conceivable class. Extreme over-registration is unnecessary precisely because the legal environment does not reward abuse. From this perspective, registering an artist's name across all trademark classes, even sensitive or unrelated ones, looks excessive and unnecessary. What Goody25 calls standard practice would stand out as clearly abnormal elsewhere. In other words, Class 13 registrations may seem normal in China, but that normality is entirely shaped by the country's unique legal and political environment. That leads to a more fundamental question. Does the Chinese state lack the ability to regulate bad faith trademark use? The answer is no. If the Chinese Communist Party chose to strictly enforce laws against abusive trademark registration, it would encounter few obstacles. The Chinese state has repeatedly demonstrated its capacity for comprehensive, coercive enforcement when an issue is deemed politically important, from decades of population control policies to mass COVID lockdowns that confined hundreds of millions of people with minimal legal recourse. Trademark regulation, by comparison, is technically simple. It relies on centralized registries, administrative approval, and renewal mechanisms already under state control. Preventing or penalizing bad faith registrations, particularly involving public figures, would require no extraordinary legal innovation. Indeed, authorities have periodically cracked down on trademark abuse when it aligned with political priorities. This makes it difficult to argue that persistent bad faith registration reflects regulatory incapacity rather than choice. The more plausible explanation is deliberate tolerance. The system is not failing to close a loophole, it is keeping that loophole open. A regulatory vacuum caused by incompetence produces disorder. A regulatory grey zone maintained by design produces leverage. Grey zones allow flexibility without accountability. By leaving certain practices ambiguously regulated and selectively enforced, the state preserves the ability to intervene, or not intervene, at will. What is permissible today can become punishable tomorrow, depending entirely on political need. This uncertainty disciplines all participants in advance. In the entertainment industry, where visibility is high and influence real, this dynamic is especially effective. Protection does not come from clear legal rights, but from remaining in good standing with the system. Grey zones also perform a narrative function. When irregularities surface, they can be dismissed as misunderstandings or rumors. When suppression is required, the same ambiguity justifies crackdowns without explanation. In both cases, the lack of clear rules prevents meaningful challenges. With this framework in place, the Goody25 article reads differently. Its explanation relies on the assumption that bad faith is inevitable and uncontrollable, while never asking why the environment enabling it exists at all. By framing extreme over-registration as rational self-defense, it normalizes the grey zone rather than interrogating it. The structure of the screenshots reinforces this effect. Confusion is acknowledged only to be immediately resolved by authoritative certainty. Doubt is permitted only briefly and only to be closed. The claim that artists registered their names across all 45 classes further cements this narrative, despite the absence of documentation, comparative context, or explanation for why sensitive, state-controlled categories would require defensive registration. Normality is asserted, not demonstrated. Including artists outside SOE-linked agencies further diffuses suspicion. Whether these artists were actually used for laundering is secondary. Their presence broadens the pattern, creating the appearance of industry-wide consensus. What might have seemed exceptional now appears routine. Yet uniform behavior does not necessarily imply voluntary choice. In a system marked by opaque contracts and extreme power asymmetries, it may instead reflect limited control over one's own name. What looks like proactive protection may, in some cases, be imposed rather than chosen. That this explanation surfaced, not within China, but through a Chinese-language platform in Southeast Asia, is also significant. Such platforms operate under heavy CCP narrative influence and can circulate interpretations too sensitive to state openly inside China. In this way, the article functions as a migrated official narrative, one that does not require confirmation to be effective and can later be invoked to justify suppression. This brings the analysis back to EE Media. As an SOE, it sits at the intersection of propaganda, capital management, and political discipline. Outside China, it is widely understood that SOEs are frequently used for non-transparent financial operations, precisely because they combine commercial activity with administrative protection. Yu Menglong's case brought these concerns into sharp focus. SOE management, anomalous trademark registrations, persistent financial rumors, and a sudden death rapidly ruled accidental despite contradictory evidence. Each element alone might be dismissed. Together, they resist benign explanations. Within this framework, Yu's death becomes structurally intelligible even if not judicially provable. When an individual embedded in a state-linked system becomes a liability, mechanisms for silencing already exist. The speed of closure, suppression of discussion, and narrative normalization align far more closely with this pattern than with an unfortunate accident. This does not prove money laundering, nor does it establish certainty about Yu Menglong's death. What it shows is narrower and more defensible. The official narrative requires ignoring the structures the system itself has created, while alternative explanations, however uncomfortable, fit those structures far more closely. For viewers, one thing that truly matters is what this case reveals about life under a totalitarian system. In such a system, truth is created to serve power, and law exists only to be applied selectively. Ordinary people have no meaningful protection if they choose not to obey. Yu Menglong's case is unsettling not only because of how it happened, but because of how predictably it was handled afterward. The rapid closure, the lack of accountability, the migration of official explanations abroad, and the insistence that nothing warrants deeper scrutiny. These are not exceptions. They are the standard operations of totalitarian governance. The harm is cumulative. Abnormality becomes normal, integrity erodes, and everyone watching learns the same quiet lesson. That visibility can be dangerous. Legality offers no shield, and even death can be administratively simplified at the whim of unchecked power. This is the true damage of totalitarianism, to its victims, its witnesses, and to the very idea of truth itself.